And joining me now, as we continue our series of new voices, left, right, center, you name it. This is a new conservative voice, newish. I think she's a familiar face to many of you. Elizabeth Pipko is joining me now. Elizabeth, welcome to the ToddCast.
Thanks for having me.
So let me start simply. How did you become a politics junkie? What got you there? Give me your origin story on becoming a political junkie.
Okay, when you say origin story, that implies you want the long version.
I mean, we're not in a hurry. Yeah, okay. 30 minutes, okay, under good. 30 minutes. Yeah, how about that?
Got it. It's weird because even to this day, I don't consider myself a politics junkie, even though it consumes my entire life and everything I've done for the last 10 years. But I think in one way or another, I kind of always was, even as a little kid without realizing it. I'm the daughter of two immigrants. My parents were Jewish refugees from the Soviet Union. So much of my kind of upbringing in New York City was them reminding me every single day how lucky I am to be American, and kind of making sure that was a very big part of my life and my worldview and my understanding of how kind of I was being raised, right? I wasn't just being raised as an American, I was being raised as an immigrant, or a daughter of immigrants, excuse me. So I think for me, the way that I look at politics now is really through that same lens. So maybe it actually started much younger than I realized. But I was growing up in New York City, like I said. Donald Trump, to me, was the guy who operated Walman Rink. He was the guy from the TV show. Right. He obviously owned Trump Tower, which is where I hung out either with my babysitter as a little kid or with my friends when I was older, when it was raining outside and we had, nowhere to sit.
You live right in the city? You were brought up in the city, huh?
Yeah, so a few blocks from Trump Tower. So literally my entire childhood was like my little Ukrainian babysitter taking me to Trump Tower when it was raining, because that's what the only place to hang out was. And I would run up and down that golden escalator. So that's what I knew of Donald Trump. And I was in a really, really
There used to be that toy store that was in there, right? Or right next door. There was a good toy store.
FAO Schwartz.
FAO Schwartz, wasn't it?
Yes.
In that building? Yeah, okay. Not a bad place.
It was like a block away. No, not a bad place at all.
Yeah.
But so yeah, that's what I knew of Donald Trump. I never really followed politics. What I did know was kind of Democrat aligned, because my parents were very close to a lot of high profile people in the Democrat scene, especially in New York. So I have pictures of me on Hillary Clinton's lap as a little kid and things like that. So that's what I had known of politics. And then Donald Trump announced that he was running for president. And this was at a time when I was going through something very difficult. I was a competitive athlete. My Olympic dreams were taken from me. I kind of was a homeschooled
What was your sport?
kid. I was a figure skater.
Okay. Well,
so imagine,
yeah. You were.
Yeah. So imagine all that training, and then you end up with no friends and no future whatsoever.
That's a tough.
Years.
That's a tough childhood figure skating, isn't it? Because it's such an individual sport, and it's funny you say that. You hear these stories. I'm not as familiar with it, but you hear these stories of it can be lonely.
Yeah, I could be very lonely. And I think, especially when you tie in being homeschooled, knowing that the only friends you have are the few skaters that you're around every day who happen to not be.
But if you're going to go in that competitive skating world, you kind of have to be homeschooled.
100%. Right? Yeah.
There's no other way to do it.
Said you have no choice. Yeah. And I had also started very late, so I had to catch up to everyone that was my own age. So I basically lived at the rink 12 hours a day. I was there. I studied a little when I came home and I went to sleep. So that's all I knew. And then I had a bunch of injuries, but one that officially took me out. And I ended up moving back home to New York. I had been training in Florida, back home to New York in a cast from, my toes past my knee that I was in for over 7 months, I think, actually, before 6 years of rehab.
So you're 15 at this point?
16.
16. Oh.
16, homeschooled, no friends, never been on a date, never been to a party. All I really knew was that life. So at this point, when Donald Trump's running, I think I'm 19. So I just spent my first year or so out of this cast, but I'm still literally going to physical therapy 4 days a week with women that are 80, 90 years old, learning to walk up and down the stairs. Once again, I am taking a few college classes, but I really was not someone that I think my parents were proud of. I was not living the life I would have wanted to live. And it was actually,
your parents were proud of you. It
was a struggle.
Don't do that. Don't do that to you. But I understand that feeling.
Yeah, it was a very rough few years. And it was actually my little brother at the time who said, if you want to get your life together, you should start watching some clips of this guy, Donald Trump, who I think is about to run for president. And I was like, what does that have to do with anything. He said, just trust me. So I read a few of his books and I started paying attention to what he was saying. And I very quickly understood what my brother meant. I mean, this was a guy, whether you liked him or hated him, that was polling at, 1%. The entire world was laughing at him. And he was going out saying, I'm going to be the next president of the United States. And so I kind of connected to that because I think I needed that little self-confidence so badly in my own life. And I connected to that. I connected to the America First message. I connected to the fact that he was just so different. I think there were, 17 Republicans up on that stage, and I didn't like any one of them. And I loved looking out and being like, oh, he doesn't look like them. He doesn't talk like them. He didn't raise his hand when they said, do you vow, to align with the Republican Party regardless of who ends up being the nominee? He said no. And I was like, oh, this is so different. This guy is cool. And I just started following. And then my brother and I volunteered for his campaign in that same Trump Tower. There was a call center downstairs. Maybe we volunteered 3 or 4 times. And then I sent a letter to the director of the data department saying, let me fix your volunteer operation. He hired me the next day. Then he hired my little brother. I
remember, look, I was at that time, very sort of tied in. I was very close with Corey Lewandowski, and we were interviewing him a lot. And I remember being in that. I always thought it was probably a lot of fun working on that campaign because there weren't a lot of people. It was a small, tight, and, rarely on a presidential campaign would somebody like yourself be able to get access to the candidate, be able to be in the inner circle. And I could see how that had to be just intoxicating.
I mean, I won't give him that much credit. I wasn't truly in the inner circle, but I had no college degree.
There wasn't that many people on that campaign.
No, not that many people at all. And every single day, like you said, I'm walking by Corey. I'm walking by, I think I met Rudy Giuliani my first day in the office. I'm walking by at that point, there was a candidate, but now, the first family, and you're a part of it, and you're a part of a team. I think we were less than 120 people in that Fifth Avenue Trump Tower actual campaign office. And we obviously won the election, and I met my husband on my campaign, and I stayed involved. I left, I got my degree, then I got my master's, and I kind of started working in political commentary, and then ended up as the national spokeswoman for the Republican Party for the last campaign cycle, obviously for 2024. And here I am. But basically, Donald Trump ran, and my entire life changed, and he took, I guess, my entire 20s. Everything I know in my adult life has been working in some way for Donald Trump.
Well, it's been, look, I get it. That's a fascinating story. What I'm very curious. You were talking about being raised as by immigrants, and that was slightly different. One of the experiences that I didn't fully appreciate until I was moderating Meet the Press is how often an immigrant would come up to me and say, I've learned American politics by watching these shows, and I've done these things. And it was a reminder. I think if any of us ended up in another country, the first thing you do would be trying to figure out, how do I speak to the local politics or the local culture, right? Everybody wants to learn. So I think I have an idea of what you're meaning there is that, they wanted you to truly engross yourself in understanding the democracy, not just the culture, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think for them it was, truly realizing what I had as an American compared to, their childhoods in the Soviet Union, and also knowing what they gave up, right? Both their stories of immigration are a lot, very emotional for me to even think about. My dad's even more so than my mom's. My dad basically lost his father in the process of immigrating. Only after the Soviet Union collapsed did he realize the KGB's involvement in his father's death and what it means to, having never saw his father again after he left. I obviously never met my grandfather. When my parents came, my dad tells me stories of not having enough money for water in the summer when it was hot, deciding between dinner one night and taking the subway home. They worked their butts off, gave me the most amazing childhood and life anyone could have ever asked for. And I think for me, loving this country is the main characteristic of my politics, truly. That's like my number one thing. And it seems so basic and vague, but it's true. And I think most of that came from my parents and the way I was raised and what my parents and grandparents wanted to remind me of every single day until I was about 15, 16 years old.
Before jumping into politics, how much of the country had you seen?
Honestly, not much. You're very lucky. People don't realize that you're very lucky growing up in New York City. I grew up in Manhattan, all I knew was the most diverse place that really you could ask to live. And I had assumed a good chunk of America was like that. I remember being a little bit older and realizing
the tyranny of the New Yorkers. This is why everybody else always hates when New Yorkers come to their town, because they come in. No, we don't deliver this. No, we don't have a good bagel. No, we don't. And it's funny you say that. The first time I spent time in New York, I realized, I'm like, oh, now I get it. Now New Yorkers go to every place else and go, well, where's the grocery delivery? How come I can't have this sent? Yeah, no, it is a unique experience, I imagine, growing up in New York and then experiencing the rest of America.
Yeah, I mean, America is beautiful, and I've loved everything I've gotten to experience, but nothing is, what it is to grow up as, a 4 or 5-year-old getting to walk through Central Park every single day. I mean, everyone you meet has a different story, has a different background. Just the diversity of thought, even. I mean, it's amazing. You grow up around every possible idea and every possible culture, and I had no idea that was not America, that was actually just my special experience in New York.
Well, and let's be honest, the best part, the food.
The food is pretty good. I mean,
it's hard to find. If you get a bad meal in New York, it's on you.
True. Yeah. I mean, I was mostly eating like my Russian grandmother's cooking. I didn't get to really enjoy it till I grew up, but even that was pretty good. I was very lucky. I mean, I remember being like 8 or 9 years old and meeting my first friend from Florida and realizing that Jews weren't 80% of the country. Like I just had no idea how America was structured or what life was like, because all I knew was New York and either my grandmother in Brooklyn.
It's funny. I'm part of a mixed marriage on religion, and I didn't fully appreciate, because I grew up in Miami, which I always joke, the sixth borough, of New York, of course. And I didn't realize until I went to college that, that we're less than 3% of the population. But I actually grew up in an area that always had teacher work days for every Jewish holiday. So it was just the norm that Judaism was mainstreamed in Miami. And then you realize, it's Miami and New York, and then there's everywhere else.
Yeah, then you realize there aren't a lot of Jews and most people don't like us. But it took me some time to figure that
out. So now that you've been traveling the country, particularly, I assume you've done that quite a bit, probably with the campaign and with the RNC. What do you see? What do you believe is the secret sauce of Donald Trump?
I mean, I think a lot of people have said it. Truly, it's the fact that this billionaire from New York City can connect to the average everyday person better than most politicians that came before him. I don't know if we'll ever see it again. A lot of people talk about this like new Republican Party. I don't know if it's that party yet. I don't know if what comes after Donald Trump is going to be the same as Donald Trump. I actually assume it won't be, but I think it's honestly his connection. It's the way that he has this like gut instinct on how to talk to anyone, no matter where they come from or how much, money they have or any background that they might have. And he connects to people despite really living a very, very different life from most people in our country. And I think people see that and they appreciate that. And no matter who you talk to, and I mean, like you said, I've been to almost, every swing state 10 times each, but I've been almost everywhere now. And it's interesting to meet regular, happy, pro-American, just normal people living their lives and saying, I feel like he hears me and I feel like he hears my concerns. And whether they're wrong or right, I obviously believe that they're very much right. To know that a billionaire from New York can connect to, the average family in Oklahoma in that way, I don't know if I've seen that before from a politician. And obviously I wasn't super, in tune, but from what I know, from what I've seen growing up, I didn't like politicians on either side of the aisle. I thought they all lacked authenticity. Again, I worry about that moving forward, but I don't think there's a person this authentic in politics. I don't think there ever has been, and I don't know if there ever will be again.
It's interesting that you sort of accept the premise that maybe that Trump might be a shooting star for the party type of mindset. Look, it is hard to imagine who follows him. Look, any sort of transformational, even president to a political party, let alone the country, their successor has always had trouble getting out of the shadow. George H.W. Bush had a hard time getting out of Reagan's shadow. Arguably, both Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden struggled out of Obama's shadow on that front. And you sort of see that. And I don't, no matter who it is, do you have a favorite yet of somebody you hope jumps in, or do you just, do you feel like you have to not say, so it's not to make somebody mad or and I get that it's politics. I'm not going to sit here and say, I'm not here to create some accountability track record here for you for when you run for Congress someday.
So you know the rules better than I do. No, look, I think JD Vance is the obvious, choice right now. I think most people are going to assume that. I'm truly excited for a future of the Republican Party that has people like Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. at the helm. I'm excited for people that aren't lifelong Republicans. That, for me, I don't talk about it often. That's the reason I left the Republican Party post that I had after the election was I had never gotten to speak as Elizabeth Pipko. I'd only represented Donald Trump or the RNC, and I'd never just been myself. And I'm excited to do that now for a little while. And I think for me, I'm excited for this Republican Party, but I'm very honest in saying I didn't like the Republican Party of pre-2015. I didn't like the way they treated Donald Trump. I didn't like the way they treated his supporters. I didn't love the party as a whole. And I want to see how the party turns after Donald Trump is done in office. I want to see what happens in 28 if they continue to embrace that outsider mentality or if they kind of shrivel up and go backwards, because I think Barack Obama was a once-in-a-lifetime candidate and the party is really struggling after him. I obviously believe Donald Trump is a once-in-a-lifetime candidate. I think there's way more opportunity on the Republican side right now for a future, but I am curious what that turns into, because you truly never know. You said, that shadow is hard to fill. This is a big shadow, right? It's a shadow no one expected. I don't know what's going to happen.
Look, it's only recently that I've accepted the premise that he's arguably the most consequential and influential president we've had since FDR, because it's more than just on politics of a party. He's impacted the culture. And look, we could debate. Some people say that's a good thing. Some people say that's a bad thing, but it's a fact. He has impacted the culture. That's influence. That's bigger than, and look, we don't, in a weird way, because his 2 terms were not consecutive, it's probably made him more influential. He probably never admit that, but I think that's an obvious sort of now reality as we're watching. I don't know if a second Trump term that came right after the first Trump term would have been this, would have attempted to be this, how would you call it, transformational.
No, I mean, also without the 4 years and the indictments and the mugshot and everything else that came in, it wouldn't have been the same comeback and he wouldn't be the same candidate and the country probably would not have been as divided as it is. So no, 100% I agree. I think he would agree. I mean, being in there for 8 years is very different from launching in 2015 and then probably being done in 28 and still being, the kingmaker of the party for 4, 8, how many more years, we don't even know. So no, I think he would totally agree. And I even think he would believe it was meant to happen in this way.
So if somebody asked you, how do you bring the country together? Because we're pretty divided, right? It's a pretty harsh divide. And let me ask it this way to you first, though. Do you think we're more divided online than we are in person?
Yeah, I mean, I think people in general are more messy online than they are in person. I think the internet is a disgusting place. I think social media is a horrible place. But also, most of that wouldn't exist if we weren't actually this divided. People might just be a little more willing to be civil in person because they're scared of, getting into physical fights like they threaten each other with online. But I think it's a representation of what's actually happening. It's a sad one. And I know for a fact I'm not going to get the same attacks walking down the street as I do if I look at my Instagram comments. But I do think it's a pretty accurate representation of what is going on in our country and actually probably around the world. Because like you said, Donald Trump has influenced culture so much so that it's not even in America. It's actually gone international now. Things have really, really changed. And unfortunately, when things get crazy around the world, you assume that Americans will come together. And maybe we have in the past, but we have, we've done the opposite recently.
What kind of advice would you give to the Republican Party to bring the country together? What kind of advice would you give to a Democratic friend of yours to try to bridge some of these divides?
I mean, honestly, it's just it sounds ridiculous to even have to say it in 2025, but don't assume that the person who voted differently than you is an evil individual, right? I mean, I have more friends in my life that lean left than right, probably because I'm from New York.
I was just going to say, if you grew up in New York City, the odds are, right.
Right. But I also, in general, I consume more liberal media. I wake up every day and I watch The View. I am more interested in what happens when it comes to things that don't agree with my viewpoints, because I want to learn from the other side and see what people are thinking. I've never really watched anyone on CNN or anyone on The View and think, oh my gosh, they're evil. I might have thought that, they're a little stupid, but I've never thought they were evil. And I think people, should realize that. And I think the demonization of Donald Trump and his supporters was one of the biggest mistakes the media could have possibly made. And I understand that he was confusing and came out of nowhere and really even scared a lot of people. but I think most of what has gone on has been man-made. I don't think it was natural. It was created because people were angry that Donald Trump won when they believed he shouldn't have. And instead of demonizing the politician or even the party, they went after the individual voters, which never really happened before 2016. And I actually think it's going to cost us for many, many years. I don't think it's going to stop what he's done in office, but I would hope that the average person has realized over the years that maybe your neighbor who voted differently than you is really not your enemy.
Tell me your media diet. You said you get up, you watch The View every day. What else? What do you read? Do you have favorite Substackers? Do you have favorite podcasts that you listen to? What's your sort of regular weekly diet that you feel like, I got to check in on this, this, and this? Present company excluded,
yeah.
Of course.
No, of course. You're going to laugh, but The View is my number one. People think it's ridiculous. I don't know why. That's been my favorite show since I was a teenager.
Can I confess? I don't know if I've ever watched a full episode.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you probably agree with them more than I do too. Like, it probably doesn't intrigue you if that's what you hear all day.
I just don't like, I'll be honest, I don't like that kind of talk. I just don't. I say this, and it's no offense to them. I understand it. I'm not the audience, right? I get it, right? They have a different target audience. But I just don't like that politics is treated the way they treat politics. It's too celebrified for my taste. And that's what I forget, the left and right aspect of it. It's not about that. Let me just put it this way. It's not nourishment. But I understand but again, I'm not the target audience, and it could be just simply a divide on that, or it could just simply be my age. Or
your gender. I know that
my gender. Right.
Yeah, that focus. It's interesting for me. Like you said, I don't love the talk there. I mean, last week I was walking around my room, pacing back and forth for 20 minutes after hearing Whoopi Goldberg say that being Black in America is the same as living in Iran. I don't agree with 90% of what they say on the show, but I think for me, I can't possibly understand why a good chunk of America hates me before ever meeting me if I don't watch that show every day, because I need to understand what people are saying and what they're hearing and why. I mean,
if you were invited to become one of their regular panelists, would you do it?
100%. 1000%. I think me and Joy would have a great time. I don't like talking to people every single day who agree with me on everything. I don't understand the point. I don't think it's interesting. I don't think it's fun. I mean, when I, appear on Fox News, I'll watch the segment before me and then I will turn it off. I don't sit around and watch Fox News all day because I know what they're saying. Like, I keep up with what I have to keep up with, but otherwise I'm mostly watching the other side. I'm mostly watching the people I disagree with the most, the people I know that I would have a really, really difficult time debating because I completely, just hate everything that they're saying. That's what I want to watch because I need to understand who is living right by me, right by my side in America, the same age as me or in the same city or the same background, and just completely disagrees with me on what I think is a basic issue. Like, that's what I need to understand. And I wish more people did, because if they spent more time watching them, maybe it would humanize people a little bit more. And, instead of just looking at a girl like people do to me that they've never met and just assuming they know all about me when they probably have no idea.
So besides The View, what else? What else you reading? What else you checking in on every week to make sure you're up to speed on what so-and-so's writing or saying, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's mostly the mainstream left-leaning media. I have to read the New York Times. I feel like I have to read the Wall Street Journal just to understand what's going on. I'll watch a little Fox Business sometimes just to feel like I'm balancing myself out. Obviously, a lot of CNN, a lot of NBC, even MSNBC sometimes. Obviously, I'm watching you as well. Honestly, it's people that disagree with me. I know it sounds crazy, but that's what I have to consume. And then a lot of, unfortunately, people say doom scrolling on social media, but that's really what it is. It's seeing what everyone is saying, from the people on the furthest on the left to Candace Owens to God knows who is in between, because I just need to understand, because when I go out, even though I'm not anymore, but for example, when I was going out every day as a spokeswoman for the Republican Party, in one way or another, I was representing every single person who publicly aligns with that party. So I needed to know what people were saying and what people were saying about those in the party as well. It's a weird feeling of responsibility, but a lot of keeping up with, like you said, the worst parts of the internet, unfortunately.
Let's go down an issue front. First, let me ask this: what's a job in politics you'd want to do if offered? Is there, whether it's a department to run, an issue to lead, a committee to take charge of? Is there something specific that, if you got that opportunity, you'd be like, you know what, this media thing's fun, but I want to get my hands dirty doing this? What would that be?
I mean, it would have to depend, just because I think most roles, unfortunately, in politics are kind of useless and don't get you very far and don't actually get any job done. I think, honestly, most people in politics
be useful, or we're not going to get anywhere. I still am Pollyannish enough to think, well, we do need some of these agencies to be functioning.
We do. However, I'm sure if you did a deep dive and your name wasn't Elon Musk, so people appreciated that deep dive, we'd realize how much time we were wasting and how many resources we were wasting and what was actually going on in the departments. I don't think anyone, right or left, thinks that our government functions very efficiently. So I don't even know what I'd want to do. I mean, I do plan to go into the administration at some point. I have given, like I said, nearly 10 years to working for Donald Trump, and you don't really get the chance to work in an administration like this one or any.
Say, if you don't, you should. If you get an opportunity to work in a White House, go work in a White House.
Yeah, I think that would probably be the future. I think it has to be, and I'd be like I said, I'd be an idiot to say no. So I'm sure that might be my future, and then I might be done. Honestly, I don't know. Politics is dirty and it's icky, and I don't recommend it for anybody. So I think it would have to be the perfect opportunity and the perfect moment where I actually thought that I was going to be able to close my eyes at night and think that I did a good thing that day.
Now that you're sort of 10 years into this, and it sounds like you don't want to make it a career, that this is a chapter in your life, right? Not necessarily the book. So is there a career path you want to go on after this?
I mean, every single opportunity, weirdly enough, has kind of just presented itself to me. So I think we'll have to see what happens. Media has been very good to me, and I'd again be lying if I said it's not fun to get asked to be on television every single day and get to share your opinion with the world. So I assume that's the angle I'm going to go in. It kind of depends what happens the next, 3 or so more years. It depends if I make my way into the White House or into the administration. It depends if someone convinces me to run for office, because as you can imagine, a lot of people on the Republican side would love a Jewish female daughter of immigrants from New York to go run for office somewhere. So we'll see what happens.
New York City's a little tough on your side.
I don't think it would be at home based on what happened yesterday. I don't think a lot of people would like me in New York.
Well, you never know. Once sometimes if you sample something on the left side of the buffet, you suddenly say, hey, I want to sample something on the right side of the buffet.
Right. Maybe I'll be the next mayor after the 4 years.
On that front. I think that's I almost feel like we're taping this we're taping this the day after the New York City Democratic primary. Look, I think let me get your take on it. I mean, not necessarily through the partisan lens, but through how would you explain why he won and Cuomo fell on his face?
I mean, there's a few factors. Number one, Cuomo was not a great candidate, right? I don't think many establishment Democrats were like, this is the guy for us and he's going to sweep. They obviously knew that because he wasn't out campaigning, right? I mean, it's kind of like the basic lesson in campaigning that it's almost better to keep your mouth shut than risk any mistakes. And for someone that had a lot that they were going to be questioned on, I think that was the strategy.
But isn't the lesson of Donald Trump actually is to not take that advice? I mean that sincerely, meaning
no, I get it.
The voter would actually see you as more authentic if you go out there and make mistakes, if you go out there and say something inappropriate in a moment, but you don't apologize for it. I mean, I think that's the lesson. Like I think voters look at politics and they think it's all kind of messy and dirty even before Trump got there. And so, they look at it and say, well, he's at least telling me the truth about how messy and ugly it is.
I mean, I'll tell you, there was like a year ago, I had a really good joke, or I thought it was a really good joke I wanted to make on TV a few minutes before a segment. And my husband looked at me and said, you are not Donald Trump. You cannot pull that off. Don't do it.
By the way, there's truth to that. Some things only Trump can do. I've always thought about that. There's a lot of things only President Trump can do. The only things that Donald Trump can actually get away with. I also think if you said the F-bomb on mainstream television.
No, wouldn't work.
Yeah, right. It wouldn't work.
No, it really wouldn't.
Right.
And I think there's certain things that he can get away with, but also he's kind of leaned into the fact that he's not a seasoned politician. He always leaned as far away from that as possible. Or someone like Cuomo has been around for such a long time. I don't even know if he would be able to just pretend that he was a normal guy and just start answering questions like that. I don't think that would work, considering he'd have so much to answer for and what's going on in his life and career.
So it sounds like what you're saying is that Mamdani just was who he was. He was honest about who he was, honest about his beliefs, and that came through compared to Cuomo.
I think that's a part of it. I think Cuomo was a very bad candidate for the moment. At the same time, I think if you look at what the left wants right now, if you look at the Democrat Party and why they're struggling so much, I don't think it's just because Donald Trump is so popular. Donald Trump was popular against a Democrat Party that put up a really horrible candidate that has to answer for, 4 years of Joe Biden as well, and what they lied about or didn't lie about, and also that doesn't really have a message. And when you look at those that are able to get people out, I mean, it's AOC and it's Bernie Sanders, who people thought was too old and too far left to run 10 years ago. This is the same guy that to this day is the only one that's able to get an endorsement out that sticks and get 30,000 people to show up and listen to him. So I think it's a problem for the party. I mean, the only thing that happened yesterday with that win is not just proof that New York is a problem now for Jews and moderate individuals, but it's a problem for the Democrat Party because it is proof that AOC could probably go out and kick Chuck Schumer's butt. It's proof that the Democrat Party is not centered anymore. And it's proof that someone like that, who would have to, run around and probably hide from all those mistakes just 10, 15 years ago, now can be proud that he stands, at rallies where people are burning American flags and nobody cares. He can stand with a lot of people that most Democrats would have shied away from just 20 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, and he can win a major primary against someone as seasoned as Cuomo. It's a very strange time, but I don't think it's just Cuomo being a bad candidate. I think these are the ideas that are truly popular with young people and with the left right now.
Do you see, there's a part of me that looks there and says, I'm old enough to remember when people were dismissive of some of the MAGA ideas. I'm old enough to remember when people were dismissive and said, oh my God, they're making promises they can't keep and this is terrible for the party. And those people that thought it was going to be terrible for the Republican Party are no longer, some of them are not even members of the Republican Party anymore. And they're certainly not a member of the leadership. I mean, do you see any parallels there?
I mean, there are certainly parallels, but it depends the angle that you want to look at it from, right? There's a difference between this is bad for our party because it's bad for America and we're not proud of this, or it's bad for our party because it's going to lose. I think when people tried to stop Donald Trump, I don't know how many people, especially in the establishment Republican Party back in 2015, really gave a damn about America. They gave a damn about winning. I mean, truly, that's it. And they thought Donald Trump was going to lose.
I think you're fair. I think that's
I don't know how much they cared about
against him because they thought
exactly. I don't think they thought Bernie Sanders could win. I thought they thought it made them look bad if they were going to put out a man that identified as a socialist, and they were going to lose countless elections after the fact because of it. That's what they were looking at. So I think that's different right now. The struggle is, do we want to keep winning? Do we want something like this to go national? Is it even going to work nationally? Do we want to stand behind it? So it's a bigger issue than just, does this win or does it lose?
Let me get you out of here on this. I promised 30 minutes here. And that is, what's an issue that you think the media could do a better job of covering? And what's an issue that you think sort of underrated right now that might have more resonance, but people in the New York Acela corridor, New York DC Acela corridor don't quite see?
I mean, I think the people in that corridor see everything times 10 and blow up issues that aren't even real issues and make people paranoid and worried about things that they otherwise wouldn't have realized existed. I mean, it's truly the biggest issue is that Americans hate each other. That's the genuine biggest issue, is that half the country thinks one side is, full of Nazis and the other half thinks the other side is full of communists. And it's a problem for many reasons.
Dirty little secret. I don't think there's that many Nazis or communists in either.
No, I really don't either. Although I did see a lot of hammer and sickle T-shirts in New York behind Mamdani.
You can find a lot of. Well, that's please, that's it's New York.
True.
There's a part of me that says New York is going to New York sometimes, and
New York is certainly going to New York.
It isn't always going to spread to the rest of the country, but I don't know. I mean, I'm not.
No, I don't either, and. I mean, I think there's also a difference, right? If someone behind Donald Trump stood with a swastika on their shirt, we'd have a big problem with it. So it depends how you see what's going on.
In 2016, he had a few of those people.
And what happened? And what did he say?
He ended up not distancing, at times, first he distanced, but it didn't hurt him politically. That was the point. It ended up not hurting him politically.
I think it still hurts him politically because people still misquote him. And the fact is he went out and said he condemns everyone. I think he said white supremacists, but everyone that was on the wrong side.
It was the David Duke stuff, right? It was how he he mangled it. I'm sure he never admits he makes a mistake, but if he looks back on it and says, I shouldn't have said it that way, I think he would probably concur.
Maybe. And then he'd probably put a truth out about what he meant, and it would be in all caps and we would know what he wanted to say. I don't know. I think it's a bigger problem on one side, solely because I think there's no leadership to stand in the way, right? I don't think Barack Obama would stand with any of what Mamdani is screaming, truly. And yet he can't say anything because then what happens, right?
Well, it's going to be, look, we're barely 24 hours removed from that result. It's going to be fascinating to see how different Democrats handle Mamdani. I'm most interested in the two New York Democratic leaders first, Mr. Jeffries and Mr. Schumer. That's going to be fascinating. But
yeah, and what happens next, right? Because we have midterm, so we have another election. I want to know what happens to both parties. I don't love the two-party system. I know most people don't, and I'm curious what it becomes, because one party is so loyal to Donald Trump, and we don't know what the future looks like because the other party has no leader whatsoever.
If we could fix the ballot access issue, the country would become a four-party system like that. But the two parties dominate, have a stranglehold on ballot access, and until that's changed, I think we're stuck with our two-party system.
Yeah, although I think it's interesting if you polled a bunch of Trump supporters or a bunch of Republicans and a bunch of Democrats, right now they would say that like the major establishment members of their own parties are their number one concern. So I think it's interesting that both sides do share that. They're just taking it on in different ways.
That's a fair point. Hey, Elizabeth, this was great. I appreciate you taking the time. It's good to get to know you.